Welcome, everyone, to the first podcast of the 72 podcast with Cullen and Ted here at CLBI, and we want to introduce ourselves and begin this thing. We have no idea what we're doing. Do you have any idea what we're doing, Cullen?
Not really, but I'm getting used to that feeling, and people seem to be cool with it.
Well, you've been doing some amazing amount of work on learning some of the technical side of things, and we've been having some great discussions about what the content will be with Dan Shepard as well, helping us out, and he'll be joining us in this first series. But we're looking at this first series, the 72 podcast, Series 1, Why? Why? And we have some questions that we want to look at. Why is CLBI important to me? And Cullen and I are both going to share a little bit about that. Why is CLBI important in general? What is it about this place, or any Bible school, that has value? We want to talk about the why of that. And we want to talk about the why is CLBI? Where did it come about? Why does it continue since 1932? And then to touch on the deep why. Why? What's behind everything that we do? So I'm looking forward to that, Cullen.
Yeah, it'll be great. It's the beginning of something new.
Yeah.
It's the first podcast to come out of CLBI officially, so it's a new avenue that we're trying out. But it's also something that we feel would be, it's part of the language that's already out there. And so hopefully this can be something we can continue to talk about. And since we're talking about the why, we want to acknowledge that we have been doing the how. We've been learning the how, and that's naturally part of our faith, I guess, is the how. How do I actually do all this? But we've been doing that since 1932 here at CLBI, and we understand it a little bit better. We get it. We get the how. But there's a shift in the mindset of humanity now.
Yes, that's a good point.
Instead of it's not going through the motions, but rather than understanding the facts of it all and the science behind it and the physical, maybe the motions per se, the reason of it all, the purpose, why.
There is that longing to understand what is behind everything that we do. And I think that's exciting that we don't go through the motions, so to speak, and get things done, but we want to know what's the significance behind what we do. That's fascinating. So we want to talk some about that.
The purpose can't be fake.
Yeah.
You know, it's you can't fake a purpose. It's either the reason for it or there's another reason for it.
Right.
It's really pretty profound when I think about it. The why is the whole motivation of me doing anything. And so it's interesting to think of how I think of myself on a personal level. Why do I do this? Why do I do that? And then using that same mentality for CLBI, which has seen so many people, I don't know how many students over the years, tons of students, staff, buildings being built, campus shifts, different things happening on campus, and obviously year to year, so many different things happening. So the why in all of those things, whoa.
And what we came up with, and what I love about our conversations is that the why seems obvious because Christ calls us to. But there's something about digging into, okay, Christ calls us to, he commands us to go, he commissions us, and he commands us to love. But how does that come significantly to life in us that moves us and compels us? And that's a spoiler alert for the last one, compels us. And what's behind all that? And I'm excited about discovering that. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, it'll be really good. We got a lot of solid stuff, so there's a lot to stay tuned with as we move forward in the 72 podcast.
Awesome. So before we get any further in doing this first podcast, which we have no clue how to do, probably we should introduce ourselves.
That would be nice. Not everybody knows who we are. We're just voices in this world somewhere.
So tell us about who you are, Cullen.
Well, my name is Cullen Halverson. I grew up, born and raised in Saskatchewan, the beautiful
Go Riders!
land of living skies. That's right. My blood is green for the Riders. Grew up in Saskatchewan, and I ended up coming here to CLBI in 2006. I came from 2006 to 2008.
As a student.
I was here as a student, yeah, and I met a girl here, and she was from Alberta, but I was already committed to going to post-secondary in Saskatchewan after CLBI. So we long-distanced for 2 years, and my program was done. Graphic design is what I was in, so I finished that up, and I was finished that school before Emily was done her school at the U of A. So I begrudgingly, sort of, but actually kind of wanted to move to Alberta because that's where all my friends were after CLBI. So I moved to Alberta officially in 2010, and I got hired on board as a graphic designer, and that was at a print shop in Edmonton, and I did that for about 7 years. Then I was a stay-at-home dad for a year with my daughter Hattie. Harriet is her name. And eventually, while we were living in Edmonton, since we were always connected with CLBI, I was doing graphics and I was always doing something with CLBI. Dean Rostad gave me a call and asked if he could chat about possibly some staff turnover. This stuff is happening. And I'm like, wow, that's wild. How can I help? And it ended up being that apparently my skills could be used here at CLBI, which was always a dream of mine since I was here. And
Amen.
So I got hired on. We moved to Camrose in 2018, and there was a few other staff members that were new. Myself and Ted, you were new as well, and Tamara McInnes, the director of Impact. All three of us started. But yeah, that's a brief look at my journey, especially in the CLBI context. But yeah, I've been all over the place, and I've been in 2 years at CLBI, and it's been fantastic. I love working here and love being around this community. Even just being in Camrose, we feel that it's much more natural fit than in the city, which can get kind of intimidating. But yeah, that's a little bit about my story.
That's awesome.
Next, we have Mr. Edward Ted Hill. Take it away.
Dun, dun. So good.
The villain. Bum, bum, bum.
So good. Yeah. Where to begin? I went to Bible school here from 91 to 94, and I met my wife here. We were married in our second year, right over there where the whiteboard is. That's exactly where we exchanged our vows. And we sang to each other at our wedding. We sang the servant song to each other. Deb and I were just talking about that the other day.
Let me be
Yeah.
yours. I don't even...
But we did it to the tune of Lord Whose Love and Humble Service. So it was a better tune than the original. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so we were married just over there. It was awesome. It's so fun. And then we were in ministry, in youth ministry for a year, and then I was 22 years as a full-time pastor in Saskatchewan and Alberta. And along came Dean Rostad's text almost 2 years ago, getting close to the day. It was June 27th, 2018, that he texted me about considering this. What about you as program director? I texted back, LOL. I would never have considered myself in this position as program director, but lo and behold, God had been preparing me in pretty profound ways, unbeknownst to me, until we started having a conversation. And less than 2 months later, 6 weeks later, I began here, left the parish, left parish ministry after being in full-time parish ministry for 23 years, and I get to be here now. And it's pretty extraordinary. I love working with Cullen. I love working with Dean and Wanda and Kate and Tamara and Mark Hagan. We don't get to work with him again this year, but I'm excited about what God's up to in his life. And all these short-term staff. It's pretty amazing team we get to work with. So I love being here, and
It's the best controlled zoo I've ever worked
it's
at.
pretty amazing. Controlled zoo, I like that. Yeah. So that's a little bit about who we are, and you'll hear a little bit more. We're going to share in the rest of the podcast a little bit about why is CLBI important to me then, and why is CLBI important to me now? And Cullen and I are going to share about that. I'm going to continue rolling, Cullen. I'm going to talk about Romans class in my second year of CLBI, just before I was married. And this is significant. The story is kind of bizarre, but it's significant because God keeps bringing it up. And that's kind of sort of the foundation for my answer to the why is CLBI important to me. Is because God keeps bringing me back to significant events. Not only, there's the nostalgic moments that are pretty incredible too, but those don't jump back to me quite as much anymore as these significant events like Romans class.
The roots aren't as deep as these ones.
And that's a really good point because they're so shaping, and God continues to use them to shape me. Maybe we'll tell in another podcast about the crazy chapel that I did. That's another one that it's so bizarre.
There's a theme here with Ted's stories. The crazy blank.
That's a good point. And God keeps bringing that back to me. And so Romans class, in short, I had watched on VHS, that says how long ago, about this preacher who took all the controversial passages of the Bible and cut them out. And all I have is this faint memory of this man holding up, and I remember the grainy screen of the VHS, and he holds the Bible up, and it kind of flops because so many passages that were controversial to what he thought was controversial that were cut out, that there wasn't much left. And I just remember thinking that, and that's what keeps coming to mind as I recall this story. And so we're in Romans class fairly early on in the year because Deb and I were married October 10th, 92, and this was before that. And we were in Romans chapter 2 in Romans class. So we were earlier on in the year. And there was an incredible discussion around the table with the students. My wife was one of them. Or no, she wasn't my wife yet. My fiance was one of them. And there was incredible discussion about surrounding what God's wrath is about, because Romans chapter 2 is about the wrath of God towards sin. And the discussion was talking a lot about God's mercy and grace. And I, of course, this really intense, passionate, zealous person at times, that's for sure, and with ADD, so I sometimes miss the point of the conversation because my brain's going somewhere else.
Oh boy.
I missed the point of the conversation, and they were jumping from wrath towards God's mercy. And I always remember that phrase in the Old Testament: God in wrath, remember mercy. And it's this beautiful thing, and I wish I'd have remembered it at that moment. But anyways, I got upset with the conversation because I thought they were missing the authority of Scripture here, that God's wrath upon sin can't be taken lightly. And so I was saying, what are we doing here? What are we doing? Are we ignoring what God is clearly saying in His Word in Romans chapter 2? Are we missing this? Are we taking this? What are we doing? Are we tearing this? And I ripped Romans chapter 2 right out of my Bible.
Actually out of the Bible.
I actually ripped it out of the Bible. And I was going to find it for this to show you, to prove it. But I know where the Bible is. It's that hardcover NIV study Bible. The cover's not on it anymore either. But Romans 2 is missing. And it was just such a presumptive, violent moment that I missed the point of the discussion. And God keeps bringing that back to me. And even if I was just at CLBI for that class, CLBI would be really important to me. Because God shapes my life, not just in a memory, oh man, I was just sure stupid and ignorant in that class. No, I need to consider what is going on in the discussions, and it really is what's going on underneath. And He reminds me of that. And that's a really, really significant thing about why CLBI is important to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about you, Cullen? Why is CLBI important to you?
Yeah, it was I can't remember which year. I think maybe my first year. Lance Odegaard was on staff, and he asked me at the end of the year hey, do you want to play one of your songs for grad?
That's so cool.
I wrote
so
a lot
affirming.
of songs, and I still very much love writing songs, but I was like, you don't know any of my songs? Like, you don't even know what the lyrics are going to be? You're just kind of trusting that it's even going to be it's going to fit in anything. But I was like, oh my gosh, this is so awesome. And I always loved playing in front of people. And so I was like, okay, I have one that I'm kind of as the year was ending, I was already kind of with the feelings of things winding down. I was writing this song, and I remember singing this song. I don't remember too much during the grad. It was just, that's what it was. But I remember one of the lyrics when I was writing it just like kicked me right in the head. The words,
oh yes,
the words went, "The me that's leaving will miss the you that never left." The me that's leaving will miss the you that never left. However, it wasn't my words. These weren't my words. I was talking to Allison. It was right. Allison Isaac when we were here. And I don't even know what our conversation was. We were probably talking about the end of the year and how things were, it's this idea of nostalgia. That's true. And then she's like, I think I heard this somewhere. And she told me, I remember the words coming out of her mouth, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. And maybe even at the time, I just thought, oh, that sounds cool. That could be a song lyric, which is kind of how I think nowadays. But as time has progressed, that has been like an earwig in my head. Like it has nested in there, and it has never gone away, which was so profound, this idea of nostalgia, that I have nostalgia for other things from LCBI back in the day or from childhood in general. But this one, it was so profound because it so clearly defined that experience for me. The me that's leaving will miss the you that never left. And I notice it when you notice your friends or your family members or cousins that you haven't seen in a while, and they've gotten older, and you're like, oh my gosh, they look so old. Yeah. Time passes. It's like you've cemented somebody in the past.
Yeah.
In like 2006 when I was here, I was probably the height I am now. I'm about 6'3", but yeah, I've gained a few pounds over the years. But I was like 160 pounds, 6'3", and
you're a rail.
I was, yeah. Like, of course, that's not me. I hope people don't remember me like, oh, he probably looks that way now, and oh, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Check out Facebook. I do not. But one interesting thing actually that I experienced this weekend was with my friend Christian Loken. We were chatting, and I was telling him about this podcast. We're going to do this podcast. Ted and I are going to be doing this, and I brought up this line with him because it stuck with me, and he said, "I was talking to Allison when we were students. I showed her that line."
No way!
Yeah, It was crazy. He said, it's from Babylon 5, the science fiction show. And he's
got to have a Star Trek in there somewhere, yeah.
And Christian is very into the sci-fi universe of multiple shows and storylines. And then he read the whole quote to me. I don't have it on me right now, but there's a little bit more to that. But the premise was, the me that's leaving will miss the you that never left. And it was the magnitude of, worlds and universes and galaxies. So it's like, wow. But I was like, no way. And then in my mind, I'm like, oh, she took it from Babylon 5. It wasn't her words. But either way, I'm just like, she clearly understood some capacity of these words. And Christian said he remembers those too. And I was like, oh my gosh. The same thing that applies perfectly to that scene in Babylon 5 or whenever that was, applied exactly to my experience then as a student and even now. And so even though that was only a couple days ago, all this stuff is coming full circle, and it's quite profound.
That's incredible. And I love how, and this is the thing, for me personally, God really connects these things that are not typically associated, and God shapes that and gives it meaning. And
Babylon 5 and Bible School.
Bible School.
That's the new title
figure.
of this episode.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. So great. But it's just the sense of, and when those show up for us in years to come, this sense of memories colliding with a new sense of meaning, and God using that to shape us, it's incredible. So there's this sense of significance from the then into the now, and that has incredible value, and God is just so intentional with that. And so we have now both of us, you and I, are here at CLBI on staff. Why is CLBI important to you now?
Well, to me, I guess it's important to me not only because I went here and I have an emotional attachment to it, but it really shows me how it's almost like what was the word I used before? A milestone. CLBI is like a milestone in my life.
Milestone, that was it. Yeah.
And it marks a significant kind of an end to a portion of my life, of my teenagehood and young adulthood, and then it affected me. Not that I became an amazing person immediately, but it really it's a milestone is a good definition for it, and I draw back to that, and it's like another timeline in my life when I was younger, up to in and around CLBI, and then from CLBI to now. It really shows me my growth and how much has changed, both physically, spiritually, and mentally, but it allows me to kind of step back and view it almost like, as I'm probably going to edit this show on the computer, it's like this timeline. I can see where things kind of flare up, where things kind of draw back and down, and I view it as, oh wow, this was a significant time of my life, and it gives me quite a bit of perspective. Obviously, I appreciate and love the time that I was here as a student, as a lot of people do, but it almost like it turned my mindset, or started shifting my mindset to not just things happened and they were awesome and that nostalgia factor, but that there is significance, not only that has happened in your life, but that will happen in your life. And it's kind of abstract, I guess, but it really provides perspective for me.
Perspective, that's good.
Which is something I haven't always had. So I'd say that's probably one of the most important reasons why CLBI is important to me.
Yeah. Wow,
what about you?
Yeah, I'm thinking. I'm recalling an experience of my first year here on staff. So last year, fall of 2018. And because I taught a couple of classes the year before, so I got to know the then second years as first years, and got to know them a little bit. And I remember sitting up in the library classroom, one of the early second year meetings, and this is a little bit of my temperament as well. I am intense, passionate, zealous, interruptive, ADD, all over the map thinking sometimes. But I'm also, God grabs my attention in surprising ways emotionally. And we were just sort of checking in. Dean and I were leading the second year meeting and just looking around at these students. And I just welled up with tears. I was just moved emotionally looking at these 7 second-year students in the fall of 18 and thinking, wow, what a gift it is to work with them. What a gift it is to learn from them as well as to teach them and influence them. And the reality is, I see such a significant amount of living hope that Christ brings into this period of time in history, this age group of people or generation, if we want to call it that. We don't want to pigeonhole people into generations. That's
Right.
that's a gong show in the meme world right now. But this age group, this period of time in history, and I just always feel something deeply. And I think it's part of this getting down to the why. There's something there that's both mysterious and unknown, but really hopeful.
And it wants to be discovered.
That is so good. It wants to be discovered. And that's what I feel emotionally. And that's what I felt in that meeting specifically. And thinking about kind of the end of this year where we had to be online and we did this long obedience toward home and abstract testimonies. And what was Derek Bouillon, who was a short-term staff for the last couple of years, he said, there sure is a lot of people with allergies today. It's just like moved to tears because there's so much going on. And it really is. We cannot encapsulate it all in kind of one word. And so it moves us emotionally. And I'm really thankful for that. So there's these collisions of experience that shape me. And I know the hope of Christ more fully. And I know people more fully. So CLBI, just such an important thing to me now as staff, as well as back then as a student. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very powerful how it all relates when you were 18, 19, 20, whatever, ripping pages out of Bibles, and you're like, oh, and then you regret it, and you're like, oh.
I regretted it.
Obviously, right? But then this odd, what we think is odd, but in reality it's what God has always planned. He's just like, I'm going to use this, and when you're older, you're going to come back to this moment, not as just like, oh, wow, was I young and foolish, but there was clearly something stirring in you, and I wanted to use that in some way, and you're just like, it had nothing to do with anything at the time. I just let my emotions get the best of me, or whatever, or even this lyric that I had. It's like, it's profound.
And discovering where that all comes from.
Yeah, and in my mind it was like, this only has to do with me leaving CLBI this year, right now. It's like, not even close. That's not even the tip of the iceberg. That's like the flag on top. Like the tip, the utmost tip, that's it. And God's like,
it's the fly on the top of the tip of the flag on the iceberg.
The hole in the bump on the log and the
So good.
So much more than we realize.
So much more. And that gives such value and significance and importance. And that's extraordinary. Well, this has been an incredible discussion so far, and we hope that gives listeners a glimpse into why CLBI is important to us, how God moves Cullen and I, and continues to do so through memories and through new experiences here at CLBI. What a gift.
That's right. And we know that our experiences are not yours, are not your friends. And we really we would love to hear your feedback. If you want to email us back at podcast@clbi.edu. You can send us questions, your ideas, even your thoughts. We, if you want, we can chat about it on the podcast. But
you can be on
just
it.
To email us to let us know that our voices are saying something that resonates with you. That would be really cool. Really cool to be able to hear what you guys have to say.
So awesome. I really look forward to that. That intrigues me. I hadn't thought about that really, this sense of interaction with others. I really look forward to that. So that's our episode number 1 of Series Y of
the maiden voyage.
The maiden voyage of the 72 podcast. And we're going to look at a few more episodes. We're going to look next at why is CLBI important? And we're going to have some alumni voices in there. And then why is CLBI? And we're going to, a little bit of a teaser, we're going to go back in time.
Some Huey Lewis.
I dared to sing on a podcast. Dun, dun, dun. And then what compels us? And we might even talk about Frozen 2. It's a chance.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Might even have some Star Wars discussions. You never know.
Have to listen and see.
You will. Thanks for listening.
Cullen and Ted, out. You've been listening to the 72 Podcast, presented by the Canadian Lutheran Bible Institute in Camrose, Alberta, Canada.